Mr. Cassidy.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And obviously you have a position, and obviously we're expressing our concern, and I'm among those. First, I'd like to say I have a statement to submit for the record. I think what's kind of boggled my mind is that there's a lot of dots, but the dots seem to be connected by conjecture, if you will. We can hope that things will work, but we're not quite sure they will. I'll give some examples. Wow, the impact of this is going to be soon. My state's an energy state. They predict that there will be a 35 to 40% decrease in employment in petrochemical and in crude oil refinement in 15 years. So the time frame of this is very short. Now, it's kind of an immutable thing about this issue. It's going to take a while for technology to be developed and deployed. So when you speak of innovation as perhaps being a solution, I'm wondering, will it be out there within 5 to 15 years? Because the dramatic loss of employment tells us that these changes will occur rapidly. So I'm looking at the amount of emissions, not by forestry, but just by agriculture. And according to the CRS report I'm reading, in the last something years, it's gone from 460 million metric tons of CO2 to 582. So we're actually on an upward slope of emissions from the ag sector, with only about a 30 million sequestration by ag. And yet we're going to develop and deploy the technology to reverse not just the upward rise, but actually bring it down within 5 to 15 years. It just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. Your thoughts?
I wish we could travel back 15 years ago and see what technology existed then and compare it to the technology today in all aspects of our economy.
But I would say, if I could, I would say that 16 years ago, we would have known that it was about to be born. It isn't as if it had not yet been, in terms of if it was going to be deployed 14 years ago or 10 years ago, that means 15 years ago it was about to be birthed.
With respect, I'm not so sure that that's necessarily the case with all the technologies. You know, you and I must be looking at different numbers and different figures, because I'm of the view that agriculture's capacity to sequester and agriculture's sequestering capacity today outstrips its emissions.
No, that is if you combine ag plus forestry. If you split those up, I'm looking at a CRS report from June 8th of 2009. It's a table on page 3. And if you split ag from forestry...
That's tough to do, because so many forests are privately owned and basically are part of our of what we grow and what we raise in this country.
See, I didn't know if the farmer, it wasn't my impression that the farmer would simultaneously have a large forest interest.
I mean, the farm I own, about 90 acres of it is timber.
And I think of my Louisiana sugarcane farmers and my rice growers, and it seems unlikely that they have a large.
Well, it's obviously clear that there are differences around the country, but bottom line, I think it's hard to separate the two. Maybe because within USDA we think the Forest Service is part of our responsibility, and we see that it's part of agriculture. But
CRS splits it out, and when I look at that, and I look at the rate of growth of emissions in just the ag sector, it seems, again, are we in 5 to 10 years going to be able to develop and deploy that which not only reverses?
I can just, again, this is actually 2 conversations I've had with CEOs of seed companies, major seed companies, and they are genuinely convinced within 10 years you're going to see significant increases in productivity and significant decreases in inputs by virtue of seed technology alone. Seed technology alone.
And I wonder if they're going to use more fertilizer, the cost of which will increase.
I don't think so. I don't think that, no, because they're talking about
let me ask something else, because
I'm
almost out of time. I have to admit, it also seems a dot that is not connected in the sense that we're imagining there's going to be increased rural activity, and yet as I look at the graph, inevitably we're going to have to let more land go fallow in order for it to be afforested. If I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've just learned that term. So the land is going fallow, so we're going to produce less, and yet at the same time our coal-fired co-op are going to increase the utility rates for the farmers, and the farmers who are driving longer distances to get anywhere because they live in a rural area are paying more for gasoline, it seems like we're truly increasing the cost of living in the rural area fairly substantially.
That assumes that we don't have productivity increases, which I'm not willing to concede. It also assumes that there isn't a network of local markets that are created through our efforts to try to link local consumption with local production. It assumes that there isn't going to be a biofuels industry that allows us to have regional distribution of biorefineries that are closer, so farmers have markets where they don't necessarily have to transport product as far. It assumes that there isn't going to be markets for agricultural products today that are considered waste material and have little or no value. It makes a lot of assumptions that, frankly, I'm not willing to concede. I believe that all of what I've just outlined can and ought to happen, and I believe with the right set of policies it will happen.
It's hard for me to imagine that someone growing rice in South Louisiana will be able to sell the entirety of their product within South Louisiana. So inevitably there's going to be some transportation that's involved there.
Well,
and I will say, again, going back to what Brookings suggests for the loss of employment in petrochemical, we have a time frame which is tight, 5-15 years. So again, what I may say you're conjecturing has to be deployed within 5 to 15. It seems unlikely.
I could be wrong about this. I could be completely wrong about it because I don't have the numbers. But I would be willing to bet that we have more employed people in America today than we did 15 years ago.
Yeah. But
I'm willing to, maybe we can come back 10 years from now and you and I can settle this up. I'm willing to bet we have more employed Americans 10 years from now than we do today.
Not in petrochemical. Look at the Brookings.
Well, it may be industries that we don't even know exist. It may be opportunities. I mean,
Brookings actually says we're going to be down 0.5% overall in the overall economy. The energy sector gets really battered. And that's Brookings, which obviously a little left of center. I'm sorry, I'd love to keep talking, but I've way gone over my time.
Chair, thanks to gentlemen.